Welcome everyone to Male Fuzz TV. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Better Call Saul Season 6, Episode 13. It is called Saul Gone. So, full spoilers for the episode. It is the series finale, the final ever episode of Better Call Saul, and we have much to dive into. It was emotional.
Yep.
It had all those feelings that you get when you end a series that has been as excellent as this one.
It had at least like 3 or 4 moments in that last couple of minutes where I'm like, this could be a final shot.
Yeah, I thought that as well. Yeah.
Yeah. They just kept going with it. Just one more final shot.
And it did a bunch of things I expected it to, and not necessarily in the exact way that we sort of speculated it might. For example, we said, oh, there'll be a heart-to-heart with Kim where he kind of finally admits everything. And both of those things are technically true, but they happened in different scenes. The scene where he actually spills his guts, Kim is there, but it's not one-on-one. It's just in a courtroom, which is perfect in many ways when you think about it, given the context of the show.
It's kind of directed at Kim still.
It is, yeah, it absolutely is. But then they also have a one-on-one scene later, but of course, because he's already done the gut spilling, it's just its own thing at that point. So very, very interesting, and somehow, some way, I called Marie. I
hate you. Absolutely, I hate you.
Do you know, it's so funny.
I saw her and I laughed. I'm like,
I laughed.
What? Why?
And it's not because it was funny in her. It was just funny because I jokingly suggested that she was the only one left. Maybe Walt Jr., I suppose he could have.
I would say also objectively, the most that was a bit of a reach, and I'm still not sure how much she actually added to this episode.
No, I think she did. I've got thoughts.
Okay.
But I think first and foremost, it was an excellent finale. It is a very satisfying finale. It hits all the beats it needs to do. There's only one scene I'm not too keen on, but just one in the whole thing.
One of the flashbacks.
No, it's not actually. No.
Okay.
No. It's got chanting in it.
Oh, okay. I'm surprised.
Wasn't super. I felt a bit over the top. I felt everything that accomplished the bus prison scene. I felt like them just giving them some fist pumps and saying, "Hey Saul," as he's walking out later, told us everything we need to know that the more over the top scene was already tried to.
It did, but I think that scene still fits with Saul's character. And even if that, you can make the argument that's not who Saul is right now, especially in the aftermath of what had just happened. It's how they all see him.
Sure, yeah. It's how in this world with all these criminals, many of whom he's helped.
Even if not them directly,
they know,
friends of theirs, yeah.
It was it's to give us a slightly happier bit to his demise, is that he's not going to have too much of a heart. They all like him in prison. He's going to be treated like a god. It's fine.
There was one point like, I'm not going there. I've seen what happens to the inmates in there. I'll be dead.
Yeah, the Gen Pop, he calls it. But no, it turns out, that they actually know him well enough. He's built up enough of a rep over the last few years that things will be not too uncomfortable for him in the grand scheme of things. But obviously, the episode, starts with him. Actually, no, it starts with a flashback. Yeah, it starts with the flashback in the desert with Mike, and it's very noted that obviously we get a bit of a roll call here. We get a scene with Mike in one flashback. We get a scene with Walt, of course, set during Breaking Bad. We eventually get the scene with Chuck, which we also kind of called last week, but it was
kind of like it didn't need to happen, but it felt like it was an obvious thing that they should do. So yeah, it's not surprising that they did it.
It made perfect sense to do it. It absolutely did. But yeah, this first one with Mike, and the theme throughout these flashbacks is, well, no, it's not so much the Chuck one, because the Chuck one comes after he's already spilled his guts, and it turns out Chuck is his regret, which is why it's not relevant for that scene to be about regret. Although the time travel theme does come up in it because of the book. It does,
yeah.
But so he's with Mike in the desert. This is during their trek, and they found some water. Thanks for reminding me about all the piss drinking. Show, I appreciated that.
Also, another phenomenal episode of the show. That's up there.
Oh yeah. When it comes to movies and TV that feature containers full of piss, it's Better Call Saul, the Aviator, and then somewhere miles below that is Batman v Superman. Just
Yeah, I was just gonna say, please don't bring that into this conversation.
It's because I watched the Aviator for the first time a couple of weeks ago, and like I laughed at the jars of piss at one point at it because I was like, oh, this is better than Batman v Superman. I now have a hierarchy of jars of piss movies.
That's a letterbox list. Someone's already made that.
But I forgot that this had, of course, this episode with the not a jar per se, but a container of piss. So anyway, he's with Mike, and he says, "Hey, if you could travel back in time, what would you do?" And I actually just loved this scene because I thought, as much as I thought Mike had some good scenes, in the build up to the finale, this was a nice thing to sort of come back round to his like origin in the show and like the first emotional big beat we ever had with him. Which is, he says, what would you go back and change? And he ever actually says what it would be the first thing, but he says 2001 at first, and you're like, oh, I bet that's when his son was killed. And then he goes, no, 1984, whatever it was, the first time I took a bribe. And it's still the same thing ultimately, because he's basically going back to the origin of what led to that advice that he gave his son. But he's like saying, no, I would go back and stop me from becoming who I am. I would stay honorable
as well.
Yeah. Which would lead to obviously his son not getting the advice from him and dying in 2001. So I thought, okay, that was a great little thing. I loved that he never had to say it. We just got it from context.
We know enough that that's like such a big part of Mike's character. That it's like, yeah, you just make that natural assumption and be like, yeah, that's presumably the only thing it can have been.
Absolutely. And then he says to Saul, like, what about you? And then Saul just says, oh, I'd go back and I'd spend most of it to build the time machine, obviously, go back and I'd make a lot of money. I'd invest. I'd invest in things that I know are going to be a big deal. I can't remember the example he said, but like that was it was all about money, right? He goes, yeah. I'll be a billionaire. Actually, is there such a thing as a trillionaire? And makes like, that's it, money. You have nothing you'd go back and change. And it's like, okay.
It's really setting up like this is who Saul is. For up until a certain point in the episode, this is the whole line that it's playing is this is who he is.
Yeah,
he cares about money and that's it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think we'll just talk about the next flashback, which is the one with Walt, because it's. I actually really like this scene. This is set when just right towards the end of Breaking Bad, when they're waiting to like be shipped off to their hiding cities or whatever, and they're bunking in this basement together, and Walt's fixing a pipe, and Saul brings up this same time travel question. And I actually thought Cranston was great in this scene. This felt even more like distinctly Walter White to me, this performance in this scene, than the previous time we got him.
I know it's funny, I can't remember who it was that said it. I don't know which of the writers that mentioned it, but they said that when they were filming the other scene with Walt in the van, they had to keep reminding him, hey, less Heisenberg, more Walt. Like he was really struggling to get back into character for that earlier stuff, and I think it showed that he found it a lot easier to do this.
It makes sense when you think of it, because obviously he shot the show in order, so we went through this journey to become the later version of the character. So yeah, it's hard to transition back into that early version. That's kind of interesting from an acting perspective, what it takes to go back to that. Yeah. The way he just called bullshit in this whole thing, not just because time travel is a stupid idea to him, because he's such a logical scientific man.
Scientist.
Yeah, but the way he cuts through the bullshit. It says, you're not asking about time travel, you're asking about regrets. So if that's what you want to ask me, then just goddamn ask me it. He's like, okay, fine, you got regrets. And Walt's regret isn't surprising, and it's not this thing where he doesn't regret becoming Heisenberg, he doesn't regret getting into this crime stuff. He regrets the company, and that of course lines up with towards the end of Breaking Bad. That's what motivated him in some way to come back. And then Saul just says, this one time I was pulling this con job, I was in a slip and I actually hurt myself. The doy.
Now I got bad knees.
And Walt just says, so this has always been you then. You've always been this. So yeah, like thematically these scenes really set things up. It is interesting. I I think that first scene with Walt and Jesse a couple episodes ago made complete sense in that episode in the context of everything. I do wonder though if this scene with Walt and last week's scene with Jesse would have felt more special if we didn't have that first one. But I understand that they wanted to have a scene with Walt and Jesse together as well. Like, I get it.
Yeah, that's what it's there for, really, isn't it? They wanted them together, not just they wanted them here.
I like the order of it though, because it's saying, okay, we'll give you Walt and Jesse together. That's fun. But the more important things with them are how Jesse and Kim kind of connect, and then how this scene with Walter like is important. You know, the scenes specifically with Saul or Kim, which are our main characters, are more important than just the scene with them as a pair reliving the old days.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that in terms of the order. So yeah, I thought both those flashbacks did really good stuff. I think they set up this key idea that we've been saying for episodes and episodes now. This is ending with him in some way coming clean and just, you know, saying it and admitting to what he's done and admitting who he is. And, you know, that's what this episode builds up to. You know, obviously he tries for a long time in the episode to weasel out. He goes on the run. It's
working.
Yeah, he gets caught in the dumpster very quickly. It's all very comical. But when they've got sitting down and he sees Marie, and I did laugh when I saw Marie just because I had made that prediction, which wasn't a serious prediction. I was just joking.
It's bullshit, is what it is.
But she comes in. That's a joke. That says this is revenge for the Australia saga from Leftovers. That's what this is.
Oh, I forgot about the Australia saga.
So yeah. Peter always comes out on top. Just remember that.
No. This just puts us even.
So Marie is like behind the mirror, and Saul's like, "No, bring her in." And this is a tactical ploy from Saul. He's going to prove, like, to the widow of one of the victims that, I mean, not directly a victim of him, but someone that, you know, tangentially he is responsible for. And he's like, no, I'm going to do this in front of her. I'm going to prove a point that I can do this and turn on this character and tell this sob story. And, you know, there's elements of truth in it. You know, where he's like, you know, my introduction to Walter White was being blindfolded and I had a gun point to my head and there was a grave. And it's like, yeah. And again, that's also why it was important. We got that scene with Walt and Jesse. It was to remind us of this very vividly so that this really stuck out. And
it's really important that this is where the story starts going, and I was terrified. Yeah. Because that is still, you know, part of the truth that comes up later.
Yeah.
This part is essential.
But this time that he's telling it in front of this, you know, just room of the what do you call it, the prosecutor and whoever else.
Yeah, it's all the government representatives.
He's like, and I was scared for my life. And he tells other true things, like, you know, Walter, like, he conspired to have 10 different people killed within the space of 2 minutes in like 3 different prisons. And yeah, that was a big thing at the end of season 4. I remember this. It was, you know, that was like, I remember that scaring the crap out of Hank, that, you know, who's behind all this? Like, whoever did this is super powerful. Like, this is scary level shit. So him bringing that up and like being scared about it, and, you know, he compliments Hank. It's like, yeah, he was a straight shooter. I respected Hank. You know, he's really doing all this, and that evil side of Saul. When, you know,
and you got Bill there. You know, who's gone, hey Bill, you're my lawyer now.
Oh yeah, Oakley's shown up. Yeah, to be
he's just there going,
attorney.
What the hell's he doing? Where's he going with this?
And the prosecutor just says, do you really think a jury will buy that? And the truly evil part of Saul just simply says, he breaks character. He drops the facade for them because he doesn't really care if they believe him. He just says, I just need one.
Yeah.
And it's so cold, and it's so like...
And he's like jury. They're a fickle thing, yeah.
I love it. He puts on this performance and he knows it's not going to convince them. All he's doing is convincing them that he might convince a jury member. That's all he's doing here. And it is so beautiful and evil. And it's like...
He makes his point and they're like, do you know what? He might.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, so he's going to make this deal. Because at first they say, it's 130-something years you're going to get. And
because they've got him on Rico, so basically everything that Walt did, he's responsible for as well.
So... we cut ahead and they're sitting there, they've got their jackets off, and they're like, here's the terms to your deal, which you'll only serve 7 years for this, which is a hell of a cut down. And they're listing everything, but he has to add on something else. He wants the nice prison. This is where we learn that he's scared of going to Gen Pop in some typical prison because it might end badly for him.
And they give him that, and it's the one more request that pushes it over the edge. Yeah,
he wants his special ice cream, and when they're not going to give it to him, he's like, I've got something to sweeten the deal, and he brings up Hamlin. And they just smirk and go, you're talking about Howard Hamlin. We know all about that. Kim Wexler told us all about this a month ago. You have nothing. And obviously this hits Saul. It hits him in a nerve, and he's sitting there kind of shocked by it. And it's when he's on the plane to, I assume Albuquerque, to for his trial or his hearing. It's not even a trial per se, because he's just whatever you call it, when he's just going there to accept his plea deal that he's made.
Sentencing.
Yeah, sentencing, whatever. But on the plane, it's kind of funny because the U.S. Marshal or whoever it is who's like guarding him, like, is getting agitated, and Saul has to convince him to let him talk. Because hey, if you hear anything, you could pass it on.
You can use that, yeah. What's the harm?
But he's fishing for info about Kim and what happened, and is she in any trouble because of what she's admitted? So he clearly still cares, right? That's like an important little touch here. And he's like, it doesn't seem like they're going to do anything about it, but she has opened herself up to a civil suit from the widow. And he's like, oh, is that going to happen? He's like, well, she's looking for lawyers right now, so yeah. And he sits back, and it's in the time that, because Oakley's up to go to the bathroom, right? That's when he stops him. It's when Oakley comes back from the bathroom. So let's just assume he's been in there for a minute to piss, right? He comes back out,
yeah.
And in that 1 minute, Saul has concocted his plan. That's what this is. Because he then says...
I believe it. I completely believe he's done that.
Sure. He says, look, I've got more information about Hamlin. Tell everyone involved. It's about Kim. She's more complicit. And sort of almost as if he's going to put her under the bus, right? That's what he's implying here.
And then he's like, I want my ice cream.
Yeah, he's like, what are you doing here? What's the point? She's already going to lose everything. He's like, you don't understand, Oakley. It's really good ice cream. Which, again, makes him look evil. I will say, though, I was not tricked here. Like, everything he said here, once he came out of the bathroom and Saul was saying all this to him, I'm like, he's going to save her. Like, whatever he's doing now is not for himself.
Yeah.
It's for her. And, like, obviously what he does, you could say, does this really save Kim from a civil suit? Not necessarily, but I do have to assume that maybe him, like, getting properly speared for everything and coming clean and, like, confessing to everything might take the heat off, or just in the sense that, oh no, there's someone who's more responsible than Kim is, even though technically Kim was more responsible for Hamlin specifically. Like,
yeah, I think that's the assumption here. But
the idea is that she'll get her pound of flesh from Saul, and that's what he's hoping for. But it's not just that, of course, because it becomes more than that. But here, I think this point until he starts talking in the court, it's just about helping Kim, because he does genuinely care about Kim more than himself. And, that this leaks to Kim, which, is having her own little thing. She starts volunteering. She's at her mundane job, and she decides to go and volunteer. It's actually a very similar size to Saul's office, this little place, with a very similar thing in the front saying, walk-ins welcome.
But she wants to get back into law.
Yeah, she wants to help, and I don't think she's necessarily going to become a lawyer again, but I think she's happy to be a paralegal or help the actual lawyers and do good without being the person that's actually, in the courtroom making the arguments.
Intentionally, she's chosen somewhere that it's all complete charity. It's like, hey, I'll do anything. It's all just, we help the people who need it, which is, what she was good at. And
these lawyers will be shocked when she starts giving, like, her opinion on things. Wait, the legal system. Wait, what's going on here?
You're good at this.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I've got a law degree, but I retired, but I want to help still. So it's kind of funny, because, like, they will probably console her a lot, even if she can never be the one who's actually, the acting lawyer.
She might not be on the stand, but she can be really good in terms of doing your research and, and helping out with your arguments. And
giving advice to people who walk in. Like, she could probably do a lot of the initial, like, discussions and
consultations,
things. Yeah. But she gets the phone call being tipped off that Saul might be about to, like, throw her under the bus with some information. And Saul, he puts on a shiny suit. I laughed at how much more this popped in black and white, because I think when it's in color, the color almost, like, mutes it a little bit, but because it was in black and white, all you could see was the shininess.
Reflection.
Yeah.
He's got his hair back again.
Yep. He shaved his tash.
He's like full Saul mode.
And he sits down, he looks back at Kim. It's the first time he's seen her, since the divorce signing papers, presumably.
Presumably, at least a few years ago.
Yeah. And he just turns to the front and says it's showtime. And I love the way Oakley just sort of turns and looks like, wait, what?
Like, what are you doing, you madman? I love Bill. This whole time he's like, Why would I be your lawyer? You're screwed. The evidence they've got against you is astronomical. This would just tank my reputation. And it's like, don't worry, I got this.
Which is funny because once she starts talking halfway through, Oakley's like, "Hey, Your Honor, can I resign from this case?" Like, "Not a chance. Sit down."
Saul's giving the truth, and he's like, "Speculation. It's just speculation."
I wasn't expecting Oakley to have such a great big funny part of the finale, but
I love it. He's been such just a consistent part of the show, though. Like, for a long time.
I mean, I'm pretty sure this is the first time I've learned his name, because up until now he's just been in like the odd little scene with Saul in a bathroom or at the vending machine.
The little confrontations at the vending machine. Yeah. Who's gonna go for the piss? You know, but he's just been there the entire show. It's great.
Anyway, so yeah, the prosecution tries to talk, and Saul butts in and says he wants to enlighten the court, blah blah blah, and he gets up. And he turns around, looks at Kim to remind himself why he's doing it, and then he starts his story, his sob story. I woke up, I was dragged out to this grave,
and you can see all of them just rolling their eyes, going, "Here we go."
And Marie's sitting there, Gomez's widow's sitting there. I think part of the reason why I like Marie here is that I didn't realize this was a thing, but it was the actress's performance. See, when Saul started telling the truth and sort of was really confessing everything, it actually did kind of look like it gave her closure. Like, the performance kind of gave me that little moment of, oh, she actually got closure from it. Because she never got that in Breaking Bad, because Skyler was still lying about Walter when Walter showed back up. Remember, there was a whole time where...
Yeah. I made it very clear I love this episode. Right? Yes. And I'm not, like, annoyed that Marie's here. It doesn't, like, ruin it.
That's just because I predicted it. And
no, it's actually not. It's one of those where it feels a little bit like just for the sake of having another character. Just a little bit where I don't think this episode loses anything at all by not having her there. And it felt more, to me at least, it felt more distracting of, look, it's someone else from Breaking Bad, as opposed to, oh, this really enhances this, at least for me.
I may agree. Well, I wouldn't necessarily agree, but I would think it would work if she was just in the courtroom scene, and I think it adds a little bit to that, but doesn't necessarily detract from it. But therefore, I don't think it would be that missing if she was absent. I think him calling her in to be an audience when he makes his first performance justifies her inclusion.
I guess we'll just disagree on that one. It's like, fine. But then I like the bus chanting more than you. I like the bus chanting more than I did Marie's inclusion.
Well, there you go. We both have one nitpick. That's okay. Yeah. But he's telling this. But then when he says, and I was so scared, and then it starts to change, but not for long. I saw opportunity that night. I made millions. I was crucial to Walter White's empire. I turned him into the
Without
kingpin.
Me, he'd have been dead in a month.
Yeah, I am directly responsible and indispensable to everything Walter White did. And obviously, we get reactions from Kim here. There's some funny reactions from Oakley, and even the prosecutor, who can't believe the luck that's just sprung upon him.
They're all like, "What the hell's happening?"
Yeah. And to the point where the judges are like, "Stop speaking now, Mr. Goodman. Like, maybe you want to consult with your not even his lawyer. It's just his advisor, because Saul's representing himself."
Yeah, and she kept going like, "Do you want to go speak to it?" And she's like, "I'm representing myself. Shut up. Let me speak."
Oh, my favorite line of this whole episode is, "With all due respect, Your Honor, I think I know the law better than you do."
Yeah.
It's impressive that this was as funny as it was consistently, whilst also being exceptionally dramatic and uplifting and rewarding at the same time.
We haven't even mentioned the fact that during the start of this case, it's it's the state versus Saul Goodman. He specifically requested to go by that name because that's how he wanted to be tried. This is the persona that he believes was responsible for this.
So he starts admitting all these things. It makes it all very clear. And he's kind of done, and he looks back around at Kim, and there's a bit of an argument if he should continue or not, but he sort of begs, no, I've got a couple other things. There's a couple more things. And he also casually just says, "Oh, by the way, everything I said about Kim, the more stuff about Kim, that was all a lie. I just wanted her to see this."
Bullshit to get her here.
Yeah. And it is, and this is what's so beautiful about it, is we've been seeing Saul all the show pulling con jobs, and to the point where we can almost tell with very reliability, if he is doing a con, which is a lot of the time, or the occasional time when he's with Kim or whoever, when, oh no, this is really him. This is him being genuine. And this was a moment, this was like, I mean, this was Saul's chicanery, basically. I mean, to put it in like terms, that's what this was. Not that they match up, obviously they're very different, but in the sense that this is him on a stand, this is him kind of like coming out with it, and he has to add on about Hamlin first, and sort of his regret about that. But then he finally admits his real regret, like the one big regret. And what's so beautiful is, and we've been saying this ever since it happened in season 3, because obviously that's when Chuck's storyline wrapped up, but how much of a shadow that's left the entire time, is that when he finally admits his one regret, and I love the phrasing of this as well, he brings up Chuck, Charles Miguel, shout out to the static from the exit sign right after he says it.
That's like, I know there's the flashback, which is great, but my favorite tone is just that where it just cuts to you. We're on the neon sign. You can hear the noise. And it's just, that's Chuck.
That's perfect. It's like his ghost is in the room. It's wonderful. Yeah. Without being silly in any way. But he just says, my brother was difficult, and I tried, but I should have tried harder. And I love that, because he did try. Like there is no disputing that Jimmy did try a lot, and you see that even in the flashback right after this scene. But he did try for a long time, and repeatedly he wanted to get his brother's respect. He loved his brother. He did a lot for him. He did try, but he could have tried harder. I love the phrasing of it. But the idea that that's his regret, that he's been avoiding saying, that he's not been able to admit to himself. And I think it's important that every flashback in this episode takes place after season 3 of Saul. Like, you know, because it's after his regret. It's after the big regret that he's going to confess ultimately in this speech.
So it's on his mind. Obviously, he won't confess it to Mike. He doesn't confess it to Walt. But this is where he found it.
Yeah, and I know he's in a room full of people and he's looking at the judge, but he's confessing it to Kim. That's who he's telling this to.
And it's at the end of this where he talks about how Chuck killed himself after what happened, and he says, I killed him, and Bill's like, you didn't kill him. You're not responsible for that.
The exact wording, just to correct it, because I rewatched this scene right before we started.
Okay, fair enough.
He comes over and Oakley says, "Why did you even add that part about Chuck? That's not even a crime." And Saul goes, "Yeah, it was." And the way he says it's really like it's guttural. You feel kind of the emotion as he's saying it. Love it. This is one of these like satisfying moments that you just get at the end of a show where the way he says it was a crime. Like I'm getting a little teary eyed just like saying it out loud again. And then it's
obviously Odenkirk throughout this episode, but this scene in particular.
Because I don't know if it's right before he says this or right after he says the crime thing, but he looks up to the judge and says, "Miguel, my name's Jimmy McGill." Before he sits down.
Yeah, that's what I want to go by. And you have the moment after that where the prosecution call him, Saul, first, and they correct themselves. To update it. But there's just that moment of, recognition that he has. That Jimmy is a different person, and this is who he's being right now. He's being himself.
And the idea, of course, that being honest and finally doing it is reverting back to his original name. Like, this is who he really is. It's who he always really was, and Saul was this kind of facade that was born over time. And probably the emotional point of the episode is after he's done this, he turns around and looks at Kim and just looks at her with these, kind of sad, like, I finally did it. Like, I finally admitted what was wrong with me. I finally confessed. And not confessed to the crimes per se, that was part of it, but finally, because this is the person that he feels he owes this to. Not just himself, but to her. And the way she looks back at him, like, this is one of those things where silently, without saying a word in this moment, it's like the most, like...
Yeah, like I think it's during the speech that he's just given, when he's talking about like the Howard bit, where he says, Kim, was brave and she managed to run away and start a new life. But that was the bold choice. That was the right choice. Whereas he ran away into being Saul.
Yeah. She like he's the one that actually ran away. Whereas she just,
even though she's the one that left, she got a fresh start. She moved on, and it was her coming back and owning up to what happened and admitting everything, which is what inspired him to do this.
Yeah, and I love that. Yeah, like that inspired this from him. That Kim's good example ultimately was able to help him, and Kim likes helping people. And then you've got the other sides to this where him talking about his brother, it did make me think about Mike and his son. Again, it's not 1-to-1, it doesn't match up exactly, but this idea of like, his brother ended up dead because of him, and that the same is true for Mike and his son. Details, of course, vary, but like I think
indirectly, both of course.
But for as a parallel, again, it's wonderful stuff, and so much about this show has been about regrets and the characters. Like, honestly, in a weird way, I do feel like this was a happy ending, because as much as he's going to prison, like everything else felt like he learned his lesson and he
found peace at the end. Like it's weird to say, but he's happy in prison. He's content. He's accepted who he is. He's put his Cinnabon experience to good use.
That's true. He's still making bread and buns.
He's making the bread. Yeah.
And I the idea that he is it comfort because he doesn't have to run. He doesn't have to like pretend anymore. He doesn't have to constantly be on guard and feel like he's living a performance all the time. He finally gets to be at peace in that sense as well. So, no, I mean, this courtroom scene it's the scene. Like, there's great stuff before it. There's some great stuff after it, but that is the scene. That is what you've been building up to for 6 seasons. Is this scene? And
that is the monologue that will go down as this is what the show was about.
And it resonates so emotionally. Like I say, that quiet look with him and Kim, like as everyone else is making noise, and they're just sharing this moment of, like, I've finally grown, I've finally done this, and so yeah, he's on the bus, and someone recognizes him, and they all start chanting his name and banging on the back of the seats.
I think what I like about this is because at the start he's like, "No, that's not me. I'm McGill." Right? We just had that moment in the courtroom where he put the name Saul behind him. And this here, they drag it right back out. I think it's this here where he learns he can reconcile both sides of him. And Saul, in this case, I think is representing more Slippin' Jimmy as opposed to Saul Goodman itself. But the name kind of represents that side of him.
Yeah, I think the key thing with that is that Saul Goodman is just a new name for Slippin' Jimmy. It's not that Slippin' Jimmy became Saul Goodman. It's that James McGill had an alter ego named Slippin' Jimmy, and Slippin' Jimmy became Saul Goodman. That is what happened.
Yeah. And I think this here, it's okay. They recognize, okay, hey, you're better call Saul. There's this like almost kindred spirit of like, hey, we're all kind of in this together. And he's kind of, as we see, as it flashes forward a little bit, and he's, like I say, he's pretty comfortable. He's baking. He's kind of pals with everyone there. He's kind of reconciled both sides of himself, and he's just himself in prison, which I think, like I say, he's happy. He's comfortable.
Yeah. It doesn't seem too bad, all things considered. But just to go back, because the flashback with Chuck was before the bus scene, so that's why
it was it.
Yeah, obviously you see the warm glow of light, and he steps in, and it's like, we were expecting this. I didn't catch this because it's been a while since we watched the pilot of Saul. But there's a line that tells you this is the day before the show started.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because when he says, "Oh, I'll try and get it Financial Times," in the first episode, he brings him a Financial Times, and he's like, "Oh, Financial Times, you finally got it!" Like,
I can't remember that actually.
Yeah, so like that's what those lines were there for. It was to tell you this is right before the first episode, and the start of the journey, which is kind of cool. There's a couple of details in this scene because there's not much to it. It's what we used to see a lot back in the early show. It's Saul bringing him his food and stuff. But it's the couple of details here that really stuck out was Chuck say, "You don't have to do this. I can get like one of the employees to do it," and he's like, "Nah, I'm your brother. You do it for me." The look in Chuck's face that clearly says, "No, I wouldn't."
He knows he wouldn't.
Yeah, that hurt. But then also Chuck reaching out and like saying, "Hey, why don't you stay around and we'll talk about your clients and your cases for a little bit." Like he actually was reaching out to try and help in his own way.
Even though he knows, that he wouldn't be doing this, he appreciates the effort that Jimmy's putting in, and he's trying to at least show that he appreciates that.
I think it's kind of like what Jimmy said about Chuck. He tried, but he should have tried harder. He kind of just wrote him off and said, "You're always going to be Slippin' Jimmy." When what he should have done is try to help make him better, try and like make him be Jimmy McGill, so it's this really sort of sad, somber moment where Saul leaves, saying, "Nah, I won't stick around." It's almost like, they both reached out halfway, but they never actually were able to fully meet in the middle, and
Yeah, like both of them were at fault to some degree.
Yeah, because I mean, Chuck was definitely at fault. I mean, I think that's why it was very easy to buy him into as kind of the antagonist for a lot of those first 3 seasons, because there definitely was fault. But
yeah, like obviously there was that turning point of, well, he was ill. You know, what was your excuse? That was the big, bombshell moment that hit. But it's fair to say he was not the best personal brother even before he was ill, right?
Yeah, he we know he kept Jimmy down from getting certain jobs and things in the law firm before he was ever like this. So
yeah, like he was never evil. I don't think he was malicious, but he was definitely not the best brother he could have been. I think that's definitely fair to say. He had his flaws just as much as Jimmy has his.
Yeah. So yeah, no, a wonderful little scene, just as a sort of little end bow, and it made sense to me that this came after he brought up Chuck, because I think if we'd seen this flashback first, it wouldn't have felt as special when he brought him up, because it came out of nowhere. He was like, no, I need to talk about Chuck.
Like I said, we've been building to this Chuck kind of spilling of guts that he has in the courtroom for episodes now. Since the moment with Howard's widow, since the bit where he was talking to the security guard where he chokes up. Like there's been these moments of, oh, it's there, it's eating at him, and we've kind of seen that just because it hasn't been a huge part of the show for the last couple of seasons. Like he's tried to move on. It's not been in the fourth focus of the show. There's just been these moments over the last few that are like, no, this is still there. It's eating at him. To have this finally come out now, it feels really cathartic.
Yeah, I wonder what Jerry, the security guard, thinks now that he's Cinnabon best friend who brought him all those cinnamon rolls is or cinnamon buns.
That's the new manager. I did like though. He's in the prison. Like he phones us and it's like, hey, so you have to do the rotor this week. There's a number on the back. Just tell him you're gonna need a new manager.
Joe was actually kind of nice about that phone call that he phones Cinnabon to sort of make sure it's covered and like tell them they need a new manager. That oddly felt like a little human moment where he's like, see, look, he's still kind of a nice guy. He didn't he could have just not done that and left them hanging, but he made a point of doing it.
He did, and he wasn't a dick about it. Obviously, like he could have been, but he was like, hey, shit's happened. He obviously doesn't go into it. He's like, this is just a heads up. Sorry about
that. Yeah, no, it was nice. So, yeah, the final kind of segment of the episode is Kim does come to see him, which we predicted, and
it had to happen.
Yeah, and she pretends to be his lawyer, and when he questions how is that possible, basically some of her identification didn't have an expiry on it, so she was able to kind of bluff her way in.
But like, hey, I'm a lawyer. Here's my it's her bar card, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it's impossible for her to go back to being a lawyer. I suspect that after the thing she's confessed to, she probably can go back to being a lawyer.
Probably not. Even if she hadn't, she'd probably have had to like sit the bar again.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah. But so we end with a very similar thing with them smoking together like against the wall, but the flame being in color. That was one of the ones
where I thought could have been the final shot.
Yeah. It was very obviously with the black and white with the light coming through the window. It was very noir and atmospheric. And
there's been so many shots of them two just stood, especially Kim leaning against the wall, like that exact same pose, of them, sharing that cigarette. It was such important moments to them, down in the car park.
And a little bit of color representing that there's still just a bit of that spark of the old life in this moment. Is a neat little touch. And the final line of the series, which I think is kind of wonderful, is she says to Saul, 84 years or whatever it is, and he goes, yep, but with good behavior, who knows? That's the final line of the series. With good behavior, who knows?
I love as well that she's so impressed that she was like, you come down to 7 years. 7? She's like, how the hell did you do that? 7.
Because he's Saul Goodman.
Yeah. He's damn good at what he does.
Yep, and the show ends with Kim leaving Saul behind forever, presumably never to see him again, with him watching from the fence, and we read the camera. Yep.
I want to disagree on that point.
Well, never seen him again?
Yeah, I think she's established now. Oh, she can get in as a lawyer. She can come in and visit him and have, like they did there, just like catch up. I think this moment of reconciliation is like a part of acknowledging that they can be part of each other's lives in some form or another. He won't be this toxic influence on her anymore.
Heavily regulated.
No, it won't be a relationship. There won't be a married couple or anything like that. But she can come and visit, and they can have, a functioning relationship of some sort.
If they get married, and you can marry someone in prison, they could have conjugal visits. And I'll say it, there was some sexual tension in the scene. I think they were both gagging for it.
That's also possible. But I think, for me, the point was, no, this scene was this reconciliation between them where Kim can spend time around him now, and it not be this, Jimmy's not going to drag her down. That's not what she's scared of anymore.
Yeah, I don't disagree with this. The reason why I said never see him again is really just how the final couple of shots play it. The final couple of shots kind of feel like a goodbye forever moment.
They do, but I took that more as just dramatic effect because it's goodbye forever from us.
Yeah, that may just be what it means. But he's watching from the fence, and we use her POV as a camera shot, and it's basically as the angle's going past the corner of a wall, he goes out of view, and then it cuts to black.
Yeah, and the other shot just before that, where you thought, oh, that could have been a final shot. It's the close up on him doing the finger guns.
Yeah, the finger guns, really good.
I thought it literally could be the fingers. I think he does. Does he do the blow on the finger?
Yeah.
After? I thought you could cut to black on that.
You also have that great shot where he's in the prison yard and she's in the other fenced area, which is obviously the exit of the prison, but they're kind of separated and there's a space in between, so it's like they're divided by like a sea of whatever. So
there's all these shots on, like you've got like 4 or 5 perfect ending shots that you could choose from here.
Yeah. I thought the final shot was good, and I did like the finger guns moment. But them leaning against the wall quietly for 30 seconds and then cutting to black,
it would have been the most effective.
Yeah, that might have been the choice I would have made, but I don't think nothing detracts from the next like 30 seconds to a minute you get.
It's not like anything is a bad choice after that. But I think for me, I think that's the one. That's the moment that you end on. I think for me at least, and you as well by the sounds of it.
They could have done the wink wink cheesy over. I mean, it wouldn't have felt overly forced because of who the character is and how established it is in the show. But if they wanted to go for the cheap pop of an ending, you have her going to leave the visit room or the whatever they're in, and as she's leaving, she turns and says, "Are you going to be okay? Or are you all right?" And he goes, "I'm Saul Goodman." And then cut to black.
Yeah. I think the only reason you can't do that, because normally I would agree that it works. The only reason you can't is because I don't think that would then not be in keeping with that big, spilling his guts revelation.
Well,
Jimmy.
Yeah, no,
even as a joke.
No, but what I'm saying is, he doesn't say his name's Saul Goodman. He just says it's Saul Goodman.
Yeah.
He doesn't. He says the sentence. He doesn't say the name.
Okay.
Then. Yeah. And just a cheeky little smirk. Cut to black.
Yeah. If you wanted the cheeky ending, which this show could have got away with.
It could. I mean, at this point, it could have done anything it wanted in those last 2 minutes.
It earned it.
Yeah.
Like a damn near perfect show overall. Let's be honest.
Damn near. The introduction of that stupid bell for the wheelchair is like the one thing I could think of in 6 seasons that felt like shit to me. Everything else is fantastic.
Like the next weakest thing is like, oh, you got Marie here for me. Anyway, like that's the battle, and even that is like, it's a minor little thing. That's the level of how good the show has been.
I thought they were finally going to bring up her kleptomania again.
He's just like, this bitch steals.
Imagine somehow he'd done some research into like, because when maybe Hank was investigating everything, he got like a PI to investigate Hank and his family, and he's like, "Hey, I've got some dirt on you, Marie. You've been shoplifting."
Can you imagine?
Oh,
yeah. I'm just gonna put it out there for me this because it definitively did not shit the bed at the ending, because that was always a vague possibility, as unlikely as it was. It could have done comfortably for me better than Breaking Bad overall. It's been on that trajectory probably since After Chicanery. Like after that point, I was like, yeah, if this continues on the level it has been, it's gonna feel for me better. And I know that they're kind of hitting different tastes, so it's not necessarily objectively quality is better, but I prefer it.
I until I watch Breaking Bad again, I don't think I can definitively actually say, because it's been so long now that, and you know, like we're probably going to do Breaking Bad at some point and work through it. We're not doing that
Not
next. Yeah, just before everyone gets excited, we're going straight into it. We're not, but it is kind of on the list for.
We did consider it, but we're doing something slightly different.
Yeah, but it is kind of on the short list for shows to get to. So maybe when we finish the next thing, we might do Breaking Bad after that. But I will say this though. I definitely think this finale is superior to Breaking Bad's finale. Not that the Breaking Bad finale was bad, but I think
it had its real, breathtaking finale like 2 episodes before, didn't it?
Yeah, like, it was kind of a coda type of finale, and it was relatively safe for what it was, and that was fine. They'd already earned so much, it didn't really matter. Whereas this was kind of the perfect send off to this show, in multiple ways, and arguably this has a weird advantage in a sense, because Breaking Bad was the send off to 5 seasons of Breaking Bad. This, in some ways, is a send off to all 11 seasons of both shows. And
in some ways, yeah,
you get that from here. And I think the way, because inherently what he's been tried for involves all the crimes that he did with Walt, like it naturally comes into it as well. And
I appreciate so much how, despite all of that, despite how heavily it ends up leaning on Breaking Bad, because it has to at that point in the timeline, of course. Ultimately, it's still about Jimmy and Kim.
Yeah,
right? Even in this final moment, that's what it's about.
Yeah, it's been about them, and it always kind of has, and that's
yes,
that's wonderful.
Lineup awards season.
So, no, it's wonderful stuff. So, I mean, the saga of Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, like, it's one of those special things in TV that is only, there's kind of like a, not a Mount Rushmore, but there's like a layer, there's like a level at the top that is reserved for truly special things in TV that
the God tier,
right? And you've got the Breaking Bad, Saul. I believe people are calling it the Albuquerque verse now.
I hate that.
I don't know. I don't really like it that much yet. But you've got that. You got like Twin Peaks,
Mr. Robot,
probably Mr. Robot. And sure, I'd throw in Buffy and Angel as well, but you can debate those if you want. But there's this selection of things at the pinnacle of TV that are just so far out of reach of a lot of other things to me.
Like even stuff that is great, that like I love watching every week. There are lots of shows that I think are fantastic that don't even come close to this.
Yeah. You call it the S tier, to go usually a Japanese video game ratings where it's typically A through F, but you've got S, which is higher than A. That's where this falls on that category. So yeah, I like it's been kind of unforgettable. Some of the best conversations we've ever had about character motivations, character journeys, and everything we were able to say we expected to happen in this finale did not just happen because the show is going through the motions or is predictable. It happened because they set things up
that should happen.
Yeah. So what made narrative sense was so satisfying. Like, the moment where he does bring up Chuck, you actually, even if you deep down he has to, that has to factor in some extent in the finale, because you understand how writing works and that it has to come full circle like that. Because he's not really said anything about him other than a few pointed little like force things, like the security guard and like these are just gentle little reminders throughout the season. It still has this like hit because he's finally saying it, and you almost feel vindicated as a viewer because you're rewarded for picking up the signs and picking up and paying attention to the details.
That's the art of good writing. It's not just pulling a twist out of nowhere, because anyone can do that really, because it's that's so unpredictable because you didn't set it up right. It's not rewarding if you can't guess it.
Absolutely.
The art of making it compelling and so perfect like this is making it so you can guess more or less the exact beats but still make it incredible and rewarding to watch when it happens. It's like so it's similar to the moment at the end of season 1 of Mr. Robot, where it's like, hey, we know, right? And it's that's what good writing is. It's like it knows what you know and how to make that rewarding as well.
Yeah, good writing assumes you're going to be figuring out things, not everything, but enough of it. And relies on
what
it
to leave unsaid, like the Mike scene at the start of this, where it gives us that date and gives us it's Mike's regret. It doesn't give us any more than that, but we all know that's his son, right? Because the show has established that over years, of this storytelling. It doesn't need to tell us any more than that. It trusts the viewers to go, hey, you know what we're talking about. It's fine.
Absolutely. I always say the best writing and entertainment and art in general is a handshake. The hand comes out from the TV screen or whatever it may be, and you have to reach out and meet it halfway and shake it, right? I usually bring this up when I'm talking about horror, because some people get really snooty about horror, because they'll be like, nothing will scare me, I won't be scared. If you go on with that attitude, it won't scare you. You have to want to be scared. You have to want to be along for the ride. So
I mean, that's a weird one. Like for me, I do have that attitude. Like, it never scares me, but that's okay. I'm not there. I don't need it to scare me.
Obviously, I mean, I don't think horror scares me either. That's not my point, though. My point is that some people say it's bad because it's not scaring them, and they're sitting there with their arms folded. That's why I bring it up with horror. Like, you have to want to be into it. You have to want to be in the mood and go along for the ride. Regardless if it scares you, if you're just sort of into the atmosphere or whatever. But realistically, all writing is kind of like that. The best writing is when it gives you enough, but you have to reach out and take the last little bit yourself, because if they just talk down to you and explain absolutely everything, it's not engaging, it's not fun, because you're not doing anything with your brain. You want to be doing a little bit with your own brain, and that's what makes it engaging and makes it rewarding when you're right and you feel vindicated because you picked up the signs, or if they do swerve you in a way that doesn't feel like cheap because it feels like, oh no, that still works with everything they've established, then it's like, oh, you got me. And I feel like I feel good that you got me. I feel like it was a good magic trick almost, because you subverted me, because you set up things that weren't just red herrings. They actually still feed into the thing that you went and done, but it you've turned it somewhere.
The example of that in this show is the Chuck was mentally ill. What's your excuse?
Yeah.
That's that moment of, well, hang on, everything we know still fits, but it recontextualizes everything and makes us look at it differently.
Yeah, I mean, people always go back to The Sixth Sense, but the reason why The Sixth Sense ending works so well is because you can guess it and you can figure out I won't say what it is just for spoiler's sake, but
because no one's ever said that on the internet.
And here's the thing. And obviously, we're talking about twist here because it's the more obvious type of ending to talk about, but a good piece of writing, in whatever form it takes, will be just as good, if not even better, the second time through if it was well written, because it will be rewarding to see all the pieces and the breadcrumbs once you know where it's going and have a recontextualized viewing of it, whether or not it was a twist at the end or not, right? It doesn't even have to be a twist. Just seeing more of the signs of where it was going that you missed the first time because you didn't know where it was going is so satisfying. That's the finale. It's all done. It's over. Better Call Saul is finished. And it's kind of like a weird golden era of TV, I feel, is wrapping up here, because there was a time there where I mentioned Twin Peaks and Mr. Robot earlier, but there was a time when Twin Peaks, Mr. Robot, Better Call Saul were all on at the same time, and it was like magic. It was like,
what a summer.
It was special. I mean, I don't know if they all necessarily overlapped at the exact same time, but I imagine they did a bit.
Like they might have done, to be honest.
But they definitely all had a season in 2017. 2017 is like my favorite TV of all time. There was probably a season of Dark that year as well, and some other things. Absolutely.
The Expanse.
The Expanse was on, and that just finished. So, embarrassment of riches over the last half a decade or so, and
it says a lot in that conversation. I've just thrown The Expanse in there, and you've thrown Dark in there. Being on around that time and adding to it. Both those shows are amazing. They're not in that upper special tier that Better Call Saul and that we just talked about, that S tier. I don't think they're in that either.
Not A+ and A.
Yeah,
give or take. Yeah, Expanse being the A+, Dark being the A.
Yeah, that's pretty fair.
We're not tearing every TV show, damn it.
No, we're not. But I just wanted to make it clear that you were throwing them in because
Yeah.
they were adding to that year. But and viewers of our channel will know how much we kind of love both those shows, and even they don't come close to like Saul in the end for me.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a goal on Patreon, by the way. Once we hit so many patrons or whatever, that we'll do a top 50 TV shows. So
oh, you're gonna hate my list.
I feel like now, like when I first put that goal, like we were still like in the middle of a lot of big shows. Now we've finished most of them, so it's like, oh shit,
you have to choose to rank them.
I have to do all that work now potentially one day. So very good. But there you go. That is the final episode of Better Call Saul. It was a wonderful ride. I will miss the show dearly, and we will get to relive Breaking Bad at some point, week to week on the channel. But we're going to go into something a bit different first, and see how we feel about it. So, but yeah, let us know what you thought of the Better Call Saul finale and everything. Your thoughts on the show, your favorite moments of the show, all that stuff in the comments. Feel free to just let loose with it. Of course, you can support everything by commenting, liking, subscribing, dinging the bell for notifications. You can support the show, the content, and the channel by hitting the super thanks button below the video, or you can go over to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, as I briefly mentioned earlier, and support us over there on a monthly basis. But any and all help is appreciated. So thank you very much for joining us. We always appreciate it. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?